Greek heroes do not grin, but gargoyles do, because they are Christian. Hello, Benjamin. Thank you for the poem. I liked it. It rhymed. And because we're on a literary theme, I'm going to read you the beginning of the next chapter in the book that I have been reading, Orthodoxy by G.K. Chesterton. This is the beginning of Chapter 7, The Eternal Revolution. The following propositions have been urged. First, that some faith in our life is required even to improve it. Second, that some dissatisfaction with things is necessary even in order to be satisfied. Third, that to have this necessary content and necessary discontent it is not sufficient to have the obvious equilibrium of the Stoic. For mere resignation has neither the gigantic levity of pleasure nor the superb intolerance of pain. There is a vital objection to the advice merely to grin and bear it. The objection is that if you merely bear it, you do not grin. Greek heroes do not grin, but gargoyles do, because they are Christian. And when a Christian is pleased, he is, in the most exact sense, frightfully pleased. His pleasure is frightful. Christ prophesied the whole of Gothic architecture in that hour when nervous and respectable people, such as now object to barrel organs, objected to the shouting of the gutter snipes of Jerusalem. He said, if these were silent, the very stones would cry out. Under the impulse of his spirit arose like a clamorous chorus the facades of the medieval cathedrals, thronged with shouting faces and open mouths. The prophecy has fulfilled itself. The very stones cry out. I don't have any complicated mathematics to explain today. I was able to follow you up until you got to the point about inductance. I got the is it inductance? I got the basic concept of inductance. That when it's increasing, it causes the other to counteract it, so that creates the current, but I didn't understand the math equation. Instead, I have some updates on my time in Peru, I suppose, although you can see those elsewhere, like on my blog and the website. I always give a shameless plug for my website in the description of my videos. But in order to respond to your question about goals, which I think is kind of ironic, or not ironic, but coincidental or providential, that G.K. Chesterton was addressing the same, that you have to at once have some sort of faith and yet at the same time have some sort of dissatisfaction. And he's talking about how that's intrinsically involved with the attitude of Christ and of following Christ, and I think that he's right on, because I also believe that to form goals, you have to have some sort of faith, you have to have some sort of vision of the way the world should be, and for us that's the kingdom. And you also have to have some sort of sense of, well, it's not that way yet, and then that's how the goals come about, is what should we do in the meantime? But your question is more specifically, how do you figure out what part of that is your job specifically? I think that's a really interesting question, and one that takes a lot of prayer and discernment and talking with other people and figuring out what you're good at, what God has gifted you, and things like this. But I guess, for me, those have converged while I'm in Lima and elsewhere. For my goals to be that of being a student, to learn about the culture around me, and to learn better what does ministry look like, what does life look like, and learn how to communicate in order that I can use that in the future in order to help people follow Jesus better. So this year I'm thinking more in terms of preparation for the future than what I'm actually getting done this year. In terms of what I'm actually getting done this year, I want to have an attitude of a servant, of not being all about me, and of egoism, although I struggle with that, but I rather want to have an attitude of just trying to help out and make myself useful for the church here however I can. Right now, that turns out to actually meaning interesting things, but you can read about that on my website if you want to. I almost forgot today's question. I started making this video at 5:35, at least that's what my laptop told me, and right now as I'm ending this little clip it says 5:57. You can tell that it's darker outside. Now if you add on 5 minutes, okay, for finishing up the file and putting it on YouTube, the question for this week is, what is the ratio to time spent making the video to the video's playtime? Thanks, Benjamin, and I'll hear from you next week.